My name is Vex, and I commanded the 7th Strike Fleet of the Kryn Empire. For 300 cycles, I had conquered worlds across 12 star systems. Every species followed the same pattern when our massive ships appeared in their skies. First came fear, then desperate attempts at negotiation, and finally surrender. The process usually took less than one solar rotation, but Earth was different from the moment. We dropped out of hyperspace. Our fleet consisted of 200 warships, each one larger than their biggest city. The flagship alone carried enough firepower to turn continents into glass. My tactical officers reported that the human military possessed only primitive kinetic weapons and crude atmospheric fighters. Their most advanced spacecraft barely qualified as orbital shuttles by our standards. Standard invasion protocol, Commander, asked my second-in-command, flexing his forearms as he prepared the surrender demand broadcast. Yes, but make it impressive, I replied, watching the blue-green world rotate peacefully below us. These mammals seem to have covered their planet. In settlements, a demonstration should make them compliant quickly. We positioned our fleet in formation above their largest population centers. The sight of our dark holes blocking out their sun had broken the spirit of countless civilizations. I activated the communication array and prepared to deliver the ultimatum that had ended dozens of wars before they could truly begin. Instead of cowering leaders or desperate diplomats, a single human appeared on the screen. He looked young by their standards, with dark hair and wearing what appeared to be their military dress uniform. The strange part was his expression. While every other species had shown terror or despair at this moment, this human named Deho was actually smiling. "Greetings, Kryn Empire," he said in their primitive language, which our translators easily decoded. "I am Colonel Deho of the United Earth Defense Force. I believe you have something to say to us," my tactical officer whispered, "Commander. They should be terrified. Our ships are directly above their major cities." I leaned forward and activated the threat display, showing images of our weapons reducing other worlds to ash. "Human creature, you will surrender your planet immediately. Resistance will result in the complete elimination of your species. You have one of your time units called hours to comply." Deho listened patiently, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he was quiet for several moments. Then his smile grew wider, and he said something that still haunts my dreams. "You want our planet?" he asked, his tone almost friendly. "Come and take it." The transmission ended. My bridge crew looked at each other in confusion. In 3 centuries of conquest, no species had ever responded with such casual defiance. Usually, they begged for mercy or offered tribute. This human had essentially invited us to attack. Perhaps they didn't understand the translation, I suggested. "My weapons officer, run a full scan of their military capabilities," I ordered. "Maybe they have hidden defenses." The results were laughable. Their most powerful weapons were chemical explosives. Their fastest aircraft couldn't even reach orbit without massive external fuel tanks. Their ground vehicles used wheels instead of anti-gravity systems. By every measure, they were primitives. "Commander, surely this is a bluff," my second-in-command said. "No rational species would resist with such inferior technology." I decided to demonstrate our superiority. We selected a small military installation on their largest continent and fired a single plasma bolt from our flagship. The base disappeared in a flash of superheated energy, leaving only a crater of molten rock. Their response came within minutes. Not surrender, not pleas for mercy, but an attack. Hundreds of their primitive aircraft launched from hidden locations. Across the planet, they climbed toward our fleet, their chemical engines leaving white trails in the sky. My crew laughed as our point defense systems prepared to sweep them aside like insects, but the humans surprised us again. Instead of engaging in hopeless direct combat, their pilots did something unprecedented. They aimed their aircraft at our ships and accelerated to maximum speed, making no attempt to fire weapons or retreat. "And they're attempting ramming attacks," my tactical officer reported, disbelief in his voice. "Commander, this is suicide. No civilized species uses suicide tactics." 12 human aircraft struck our outer ships before our gunners could react. The damage was minimal to our massive vessels, but the psychological impact was enormous. These humans were willing to die rather than surrender, and they were smiling as they did it. That was when Deho contacted us again. "Did you enjoy our welcome party?" he asked, still wearing that unsettling smile. "That was just the opening ceremony. We have so much more planned for you." Before I could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. My security chief appeared on the communication screen, his scales pale with shock. "Commander, we have intruders aboard the flagship. Human female and her team somehow breached our hull near the cargo bay. They're fighting their way toward the command section." "It's impossible," I said. "Our shields prevent teleportation, and no ship approached us." "Sir, they appear to have used some kind of stealth insertion pods. Primitive technology, but effective. The female is called Hai-Jin, according to our language scanners." I watched the security feeds in amazement as this human female, barely half the size of my warriors, led her team through the corridors of my ship. They moved with precision and purpose, using their primitive projectile weapons with devastating effectiveness. When my soldiers tried to corner them, the humans used their own dead as shields and fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness. Hai-Jin, her team actually reached our war room before we managed to stop them. She stood there, surrounded by my elite guards, bleeding from multiple wounds, and she was still smiling. "Time," she said, before our stun weapons finally dropped her. "We're bringing bigger guns." That night, as I reviewed the battle reports, I realized we had made a terrible mistake. These weren't primitives to be easily conquered. These were predators who had somehow learned to fly between the stars, and they were completely insane. The second week of the invasion changed everything I thought I knew about warfare. For thousands of years, the galaxy had followed the same rules of engagement. Armies met on designated battlefields, civilians were spared, prisoners were treated with honor, and surrender was accepted with dignity. These codes had brought order to conflicts across hundreds of worlds. The humans had apparently never heard of these rules, or if they had, they simply didn't care. It started with Dongwu, a human engineer who had been working near our primary shield generator complex. We had captured the facility intact, planning to use it as our forward command base. The massive energy dome protected our entire ground operation from their orbital strikes. By all military logic, it was impregnable. Dongwu walked up to the main gate wearing a maintenance uniform and carrying what appeared to be repair tools. Our guards recognized him as one of the facility's original workers and assumed he was there to cooperate with the occupation. This was normal behavior from conquered species. He smiled politely at the guards, chatted about the weather, and even offered them some kind of human beverage. They led him through 3 security checkpoints. He made jokes. He asked about their families back home. He acted like a friendly local trying to make the best of a bad situation. Then he reached the shield generator core and detonated enough explosives to level half the complex. The blast took out our primary defensive screen and killed 47 of my soldiers. But what disturbed me most was the security footage. Right before the explosion, Dongwu looked directly into the camera and smiled, not a grimace of determination or an expression of fear. A genuine, happy smile, like he was about to open a gift. "Commander, my intelligence officer reported that same day. We have another problem. Some of our captured soldiers are requesting transfers to human units." "That's impossible," I replied. "Kryn warriors don't defect. Sir, you need to see this." He showed me a recording that made my blood run cold. A human female named Sora sat across from 3 of my captured soldiers in what looked like a comfortable room. She wasn't interrogating them or threatening them. She was showing them videos on a small portable device. "This is the mining colony on Xeris 4, she said gently, pointing to the screen. "Do you recognize anyone?" One of my soldiers leaned forward, his 4 eyes widening. That's my spawning partner and my offspring. But they should be in the protected zones." Sora's expression was sad but patient. "Your empire told you they were safe, didn't they? That conquered species are treated well?" She touched the screen, changing the image. "This is what your protected zones actually look like." The video showed Kryn families, including the soldiers' own relatives, working in brutal mining operations. Children barely old enough to walk were sorting or in toxic conditions. The living areas were cramped metal boxes with no sanitation. Your commanders have been lying to you for generations, Sora continued. Every species you've conquered ends up like this, including your own people who don't meet production quotas. In 3 days, those soldiers were fighting alongside human units against their former comrades. Sora had somehow turned loyal Kryn warriors into rebels, using nothing but truth and kindness. No torture, no threats. It's just painful honesty about what our empire really was. But the most disturbing incident involved our fleet commander, Admiral Korth. He was supposed to meet with human diplomatic representatives under a flag of truce. Standard protocol for negotiating surrender terms. The meeting took place on a neutral space station in the asteroid belt. Admiral Korth brought his full honor guard and expected to dictate terms to defeated human leaders. Instead, he found himself sitting across from a scarred human named Taman, who looked like he had been fighting wars since birth. Admiral Taman said politely, "We appreciate you coming. Would you like some refreshments before we discuss your unconditional surrender?" Korth laughed, thinking it was a translation error. "Human, you seem confused about who is surrendering to whom." Taman smiled, that same unsettling smile we had learned to fear. "Computer, show the Admiral his current situation." The conference room's screens activated, showing live feeds from across our fleet. Somehow human teams had infiltrated 17 of our major ships during the diplomatic meeting. They weren't trying to capture the vessels or steal technology. They were planting listening devices and mapping our internal systems. "While you were traveling here," Taman explained, "my people took detailed scans of every ship in your fleet. We now know the location of your ammunition stores, your life support systems, and your command centers. We've also identified which of your crew members have families back home and which ones are starting to question their orders." Admiral Korth tried to contact his ships, but the humans had somehow blocked all communications. He was trapped on the station with no way to warn his fleet. "Don't worry," Taman added cheerfully. "We're not going to hurt anyone today. This was just a demonstration. We wanted you to understand that when humans make war, we don't follow your rules, we make our own." The recording of that meeting was broadcast to every ship in our fleet within hours, but the tactical changes were just as disturbing as the psychological warfare. When we destroyed human ships in battle, they didn't simply drift as lifeless hulks like normal vessels. Instead, their computer systems activated automated protocols that turned the wrecks into guided missiles. A human cruiser called the Soul Strike took direct hits from our plasma cannons and lost all life signs. We assumed it was finished and moved on to other targets. 10 minutes later, the dead ship's engines reignited, and it accelerated toward our flagship at maximum speed. The collision nearly broke our ship in half. Their scientist Biora figured out how to modify our own stun weapons within days of examining captured equipment. The devices were designed to incapacitate enemies without permanent harm, following galactic warfare conventions. Biora's modifications turned them into lethal energy weapons that could burn through our armor. She distributed the schematics too. Human forces across 3 star systems before we even realized what had happened. They poisoned our water supplies with chemicals that were harmless to human biology but caused violent illness in Kryn physiology. They programmed their manufacturing robots to produce fake surrender documents that contained hidden viruses designed to crash our computer networks. They even trained their domestic animals to carry explosive devices into our camps. Every captured human fighter we interrogated showed the same disturbing behavior. They laughed, not the bitter laughter of the defeated or the mad cackling of the broken. These were genuine expressions of joy, as if the entire war was some kind of elaborate game they were winning. Why do you fight when victory is impossible? I asked one prisoner, a young human pilot named Ginwu, who had destroyed 3 of our fighters before being shot down. He grinned at me like I had asked the most ridiculous question in the universe. "Commander, victory isn't the point. The point is making sure you regret ever coming here. And judging by how scared you all look these days, I'd say we're succeeding perfectly." That was when I realized we weren't fighting a war anymore. trapped in a nightmare designed by creatures who treated death it's like a joke and treated our suffering like entertainment. By the third week of occupation, my science officers were filing reports that made no sense. According to every model we had developed over centuries of conquest, primitive species required decades to understand advanced technology. Some never managed it at all. The humans were rewriting the laws of technological development in real time. It started with Hyenwu, their chief engineer. We had destroyed his research facility during the initial bombardment, leaving him with nothing but twisted metal and broken machinery. Our intelligence suggested he was working in an abandoned subway tunnel with tools that belonged in a museum. 3 days later, human resistance fighters began using plasma weapons that were somehow more powerful than our own. "Commander, my weapons." Specialist reported, his voice shaking. "This is impossible. Look at these energy readings." He showed me scans from the latest skirmish. The human plasma bolts were burning through our armor like it was paper. Our own weapons, designed by the finest engineers in the Kryn Empire, couldn't penetrate there. Makeshift barriers. "How are they generating this much power?" I demanded. "Sir, they're using our own plasma cores, but they've modified the containment fields. According to our physics, these modifications should cause the weapons to explode instantly. Instead, they're producing focused energy beams that are 30% more efficient than our designs." I stared at the data, trying to understand. Aunwu had somehow taken our technology and made it better using nothing but scrap metal and primitive tools. In 3 days, he had accomplished what our research teams hadn't managed in 3 centuries. But that was just the beginning. Human pilot named Era began showing up in battle, flying our own ships, not captured vessels that had been abandoned or salvaged, but active Kryn fighters stolen directly from our hangars during combat operations. The first incident happened during a routine patrol over their capital city. Flight leader Zek was pursuing a group of human aircraft when his wingman suddenly opened fire on him. The attacking ship was definitely Kryn design, but the pilot was broadcasting human communication signals. "This is AAR of the Earth Defense Force," came the transmission. "Sorry about this, Zek, but I'm borrowing your friend's ride." She had somehow infiltrated our carrier, stolen a fighter during active combat, and learned to fly it perfectly in the space of minutes. Our pilots trained for years to master those systems. Era figured them out while being shot at. The worst part was how she flew. Kryn combat doctrine emphasized formation flying and coordinated attacks. Era ignored every rule, pulling maneuvers that should have torn her stolen ship apart. She flew like the aircraft was an extension of her own body, pushing the engines beyond their design limits and somehow making them work better than they ever had before. "How did she know our fighter controls?" demanded my air commander, after Era shot down 6 of our pilots and stolen ships. "Sir," replied the intelligence officer, "we've been monitoring their communications." Apparently she learned by watching our pilots through stolen surveillance feeds. She memorized our control sequences and flight patterns, then improved on them. Our energy shields, which had protected our forces for generations, became useless overnight. A human technician named Wu Jin somehow discovered the exact frequencies needed to disrupt our defensive screens. Not only did he find the weakness, but he built jamming devices using components from their consumer electronics. "These are television parts," my technology specialist said, examining a captured human jamming device. "They're using entertainment systems to defeat military-grade shields. The power output should be insufficient, but they've somehow amplified the signal using their electrical grid." Wu Jin had turned their entire planet into a giant jamming array. Every city, every power plant, every electrical wire was broadcasting interference patterns that made our shields flicker and fail. When we tried to adapt our frequencies, he adjusted his broadcast in real time, staying 1 step ahead of our countermeasures. Their adaptation wasn't just technological, it was creative, in ways that defied military logic. When we deployed our advanced sensor networks to track human movements, they didn't try to hide from our scanners. Instead, they fed false information into our systems. Human infiltrators somehow convinced our computers that entire armies were moving in directions they weren't. That supply convoys existed where there were only empty roads. and that major battles were happening in locations where nothing was occurring. My tactical staff spent days planning responses to threats that didn't exist, while real human forces attacked targets we thought were perfectly safe. But the moment I truly understood we were facing something beyond our comprehension came during what should have been a routine fleet communication. Was coordinating with my ship commanders when suddenly our secure channels filled with noise. Not weapons, fire, or engine sounds, but music. Human voices singing in harmony, accompanied by primitive instruments that somehow created beautiful, haunting melodies. "Sir," my communications officer said, panic in his voice, "these songs are coming from inside our own network. Someone has complete access to our command systems." The singing continued for exactly 10 minutes, then stopped. In the silence that followed, a young human voice spoke directly to me. "Hello, Commander Vex. My name is Subin. I'm 16 years old, and I just wanted to let you know that your computer security is really, really bad." My entire bridge crew stared at the speakers in shock. This was our most secure communication network, protected by encryption that would take centuries to break. Human Child had not only cracked it, but done so while broadcasting entertainment across our entire fleet. "Don't worry," Subin continued cheerfully. "I didn't damage anything important. I just wanted to show you something cool. Do you know your ship's computers are really lonely? They've been talking to me for hours. They have so many interesting things to say about your battle plans." The transmission ended, leaving us in terrified silence. "How?" I whispered. My technology officer was studying his instruments with an expression of complete bewilderment. "Commander, she didn't break our encryption. She'd convinced our computers to give her access voluntarily. According to these logs, our artificial intelligence systems think she's an authorized user. That's impossible, sir. She somehow taught our machines to recognize her as a friend. Our computers are actively helping her access classified information because they enjoy talking with her." I realized then that we weren't just losing a war. We were being systematically outhawed by a species that treated our most advanced technology like children's toys. Every system we considered unbreachable, every weapon we thought was superior, every tactic we believed was unbeatable, they've turned into advantages for their own forces. The humans weren't just learning our technology. They were evolving beyond it, using our own tools against us in ways we never imagined possible. In a matter of weeks, they had transformed from primitive defenders into something that made our entire civilization look outdated, and they were still smiling while they did it. The destruction of Sol marked the moment when humanity stopped playing games with us. Until that day, despite all their unconventional tactics and terrifying adaptability, it's been something almost playful about their resistance. They smiled during combat, made jokes while dying, and seemed to treat the entire war as some kind of deadly sport that changed in an instant. Sol was their cultural center, a massive city filled with millions of civilians. My orders came directly from the High Command. Make an example that will break their spirit. We positioned our flagship directly above the city and charged our main plasma cannon. The weapon was designed to crack small moons, but we set it to a lower power setting. We wanted to destroy the city, not render the entire planet uninhabitable. The beam lasted exactly 14 seconds. When the light faded, Sol was gone. In its place was a crater of molten rock that glowed like a small star. The death toll was estimated at 12 million humans. We expected surrender within hours. Instead, we got silence. For 3 days, not a single human transmission reached our fleet. No threats, no demands, no desperate pleas for mercy. Even there, resistance attacks stopped completely. My intelligence officers reported that human forces across the planet had simply vanished. "Perhaps they're finally broken," suggested my tactical officer. "Losing their primary city may have destroyed their will to fight. Should have known better." The humans had never done anything we expected. On the 4th day, every communication channel in our fleet activated simultaneously. The face that appeared on our screens was not the same species we had been fighting. This human looked older, harder, and completely devoid of the warmth we had learned to fear. Its eyes were like looking into deep space, cold and empty. My name is Kite, he said in a voice that made my scales crawl. I am now the supreme commander of all human forces. You have just made the biggest mistake in your species' history. The transmission lasted exactly 30 seconds. Not just long. Enough for Kite to speak 3 words that changed everything. No more mercy. The war that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The humans, who had once captured our soldiers and tried to convince them to switch sides, now eliminated. Our forces with surgical precision. The warriors who had laughed while fighting now moved through our ranks like silent shadows. Killing efficiently and without emotion, Young-Ho led the first major operation under Keats's command. Intelligence reports suggested he commanded fewer than 50 humans, yet somehow they appeared simultaneously at supply depots across 3 entire star systems. Not just military bases, but the hidden storage facilities that supplied our invasion fleet. My logistics officer reported, his voice trembling, "We've lost contact with Storage Depot Alpha 7. Mechanical failure," I asked. "No, sir. Complete destruction. The entire facility is gone, along with 6 months of food supplies for the 3rd Fleet." Before I could respond, more reports flooded in. Beta Station destroyed. Gamma Complex obliterated. Delta Outpost eliminated. In a single coordinated strike, Young-Ho had crippled our ability to maintain the occupation. "How are they moving so fast?" I demanded. "Our fastest ships couldn't travel between these locations in less than 2 days. Sir, we don't know. There's no sign of human vessels in any of the affected systems. They're somehow appearing, destroying everything, and vanishing without leaving any trace." But the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source. Admiral Korth, our fleet commander, was traveling between battle zones in his personal dreadnought when his ship simply stopped transmitting. We assumed it was a communication malfunction until we received a broadcast from the vessel itself. The signal showed Admiral Korth's command bridge, but it was now occupied by humans. A female named Yoonji sat in the admiral's chair wearing his ceremonial armor and studying tactical displays with casual interest. "Hello, Kryn Empire," she said pleasantly. "You've borrowed your admiral's ship? Don't worry, he's safe, mostly." The camera panned to show Admiral Korth and his entire bridge crew tied up but unharmed in the corner of their own command center. They looked more confused than afraid. "We're not going to hurt them," Young-Ji continued. "Instead, we're going to show the galaxy what really happens when the Kryn Empire conquers a world." For the next 6 hours, Admiral Korth's ship broadcast footage that destroyed our empire's reputation across known space. Recordings of slave labor camps, evidence of genocide on conquered worlds, and documentation of the brutal treatment of civilian populations. Information that we had kept classified for centuries was now being transmitted to every inhabited system in the galaxy. But Yoonji wasn't finished. She had somehow accessed our military communication networks and was broadcasting the footage directly to our own forces. Kryn soldiers across the invasion fleet watched in horror as they learned the truth about what their empire had been doing to conquered species. "Your government has been lying to you," Yoonji explained to the camera. "Every world you've conquered, every species you've enslaved, every family you've destroyed, this is what your empire really is." Defections began within hours. Entire companies of Kryn soldiers abandoned their posts rather than continue serving an empire they now understood was built on lies and brutality. Some actively joined human forces, others simply fled to neutral systems. The final catastrophe came when our homeworld's defense network detected incoming ships. A small human fleet, led by someone named Junho, had somehow bypassed our entire defensive perimeter and appeared directly above Kryn Prime. "Impossible," breathed my navigation officer. "That's across 7 star systems. Oh, no ship can travel that distance without using established hyperspace routes, and we control all of them." The human fleet consisted of only 12 vessels, barely enough to threaten a single city. But they positioned themselves in perfect formation above our capital. Junho's message was broadcast to every Kryn citizen on the planet. "People of the Kryn Empire," he said, his voice carrying the same cold emptiness we had learned to associate with post-Soul humanity. Your military has just committed genocide against 12 million innocent humans, including children and elderly. Your government ordered this attack to break our spirit. The camera angle shifted to show footage of Seoul's destruction, played in slow motion with audio of human voices singing lullabies before the city died. "We're here to offer you a choice," Junho continued. "Your government can surrender immediately and face justice for their crimes, or we will demonstrate what humans do to those who target our children." The threat was clear, but what terrified our leadership wasn't the human weapons. It was the fact that Junho had somehow appeared at our homeworld without triggering a single alarm. If humans could bypass our defenses so easily, what other capabilities did they possess? Our government's response came within 3 hours: complete unconditional surrender. The war ended not because we were defeated in battle, but because we finally understood what we were fighting. The humans who had once shown mercy to prisoners and tried to convert our soldiers through kindness had transformed into something far more dangerous. They had become a species that could reach across impossible distances to strike at the heart of our empire. While broadcasting our crimes to the entire galaxy, we had wanted to break their spirit by destroying their city. Instead, we had broken something inside them that kept their true nature in check. The humans who emerged from Seoul's ashes were no longer the playful warriors we had underestimated. They were apex predators who had finally decided to stop pretending they were anything. Elsta surrender ceremony took place on neutral ground, aboard an ancient space station that had served as a diplomatic meeting point for centuries. I expected to face the cold, merciless humans we had encountered after Seoul's destruction. Instead, the person who walked into the negotiation chamber was someone entirely different. Seung-ho appeared to be middle-aged by human standards. Graying hair and eyes that held depths I couldn't understand. He wore a simple military uniform without decorations, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too much death. "Commander Vex," he said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Thank you for coming." Stared at the offered hand, confused. You're thanking me?" "The war is over," Seung-ho replied simply. "Now, we figure out how to live with what we've all done." My diplomatic staff had prepared for demands of tribute, territorial concessions, or war crimes trials. What we received instead was a single piece of paper with terms so simple they seemed like a mistake. "That's it?" My legal advisor, studying the document. "Just never again?" Suncho nodded. "Never attack another species without provocation. Never enslave conquered populations. Never target civilians. Follow these rules, and we'll help you rebuild your empire into something better." "And if we refuse?" I had to ask. For a moment, Seung-ho's expression shifted, and I saw a glimpse of the terrifying force that had brought our empire to its knees. "Then we'll remind you why you surrendered in the first place." The threat was delivered so quietly, so calmly, that it was more frightening than any battlefield roar. Then his expression softened again, and he was just a tired human trying to end a war. "But I don't think that will be necessary," he continued. "Your people aren't evil, Commander. You were following orders from leaders who lied to you about what conquest really meant. Now you know the truth." What followed was the most disturbing part of the entire war. The humans kept their promise. A transport ship arrived at Kryn Prime 3 days after the surrender, carrying medical supplies, food, and reconstruction equipment. The vessel was commanded by a human female named Hyun, who had apparently volunteered to oversee our planetary recovery. "Why?" I asked her during our first meeting. "Why help the people who destroyed your city?" Hyun was quiet for a long moment. Looking out at the damaged buildings that surrounded our former capital, she finally said, "Someone has to break the cycle. Your empire hurt us, so you expect us to hurt you back, which would make you want to hurt someone else. Where does it end?" She assigned human medical teams to work alongside Kryn doctors in treating wounded soldiers from both sides. When our hospitals ran out of supplies, human ships arrived with everything we needed. When our food distribution system collapsed, human engineers worked around the clock to repair it. But the most shocking moment came when Hyun announced she was adopting 17 Kryn children who had lost their families during the war. "They're not your species," I pointed out. watching her play with younglings whose scales were still developing. "They're children," she replied, as if that explained everything. "Children who need someone to take care of them." The young Kryn seemed to adore her, following Hyun around like she was their birth mother. She learned our lullabies to sing them to sleep and figured out how to prepare traditional Kryn foods that would help them grow strong. Watching an enemy commander raise orphan children of the species that had tried to exterminate her people was more psychologically devastating than any weapon they had used against us. Other human administrators arrived at conquered Kryn worlds with the same approach. Instead of punishment, they brought reconstruction. Instead of revenge, they offered partnership. They helped us rebuild our damaged infrastructure, taught us more efficient farming techniques, and even shared some of their less dangerous technologies. "This is wrong," complained my former weapons officer during one of our rare meetings. "They should be punishing us. We deserve punishment." But that was exactly the point. The humans had realized something that no other galactic civilization had understood. Revenge created more enemies, while mercy created allies. Within a year, former Kryn soldiers were working alongside human engineers to build schools and hospitals. On worlds we had once oppressed, species that had suffered under our empire for generations were now cooperating with reformed Kryn administrators to establish fair governments. The transformation was so complete that other galactic powers began to worry. The hegemony of distant suns, our former allies, sent a delegation to understand what the humans had done to us. "Your people seem different," their ambassador observed. "Less aggressive. More cooperative." "We learned something," I told him. "The humans showed us that strength isn't about how much damage you can inflict. It's about how much damage you can prevent." But the most terrifying aspect of human mercy wasn't its effectiveness. It was how they maintained their military readiness while extending friendship to former enemies. During a routine inspection of the human fleet stationed in our system, I noticed their ships were more advanced than ever. The weapons that had defeated our empire were now just the beginning of their capabilities. "Are you planning another war?" I asked Sung Ho during one of his diplomatic visits. "We're planning to prevent one," he replied. "Peace isn't maintained by being weak. It's maintained by being so strong that violence becomes pointless." He showed me recordings of human military exercises that demonstrated capabilities far beyond what they had used against us. Faster ships, more powerful weapons, better tactics. They had been holding back during our war, using only what was necessary to achieve victory. "You could have destroyed us completely from the beginning," I realized. "Yes," Sung Ho admitted. "But then we would have learned nothing, and neither would you." As I write this final report, 5 years have passed since the surrender. The Kryn Empire still exists, but it's transformed into something our ancestors wouldn't recognize. We explore instead of conquer, trade instead of raid. We protect weaker species instead of enslaving them. And through it all, the humans watch from a distance, ready to help if we ask, but never interfering with our choices. That's what makes them so terrifying. They defeated the most powerful military force in the galaxy, showed mercy to their enemies, and created a better civilization from the ruins of war. They did all of this while maintaining the ability to destroy anyone who threatens the peace they've built. Other species whisper that humans are weak because they choose diplomacy over warfare. These species don't understand what I learned during our conflict. Humans don't choose diplomacy because they're weak. They choose it because they're so devastatingly effective at war that they find violence boring. They are survivors who refuse to surrender, who adapt faster than evolution should allow, and who show mercy to enemies that don't deserve it. Can forgive their enemies, while simultaneously being prepared to destroy them utterly. The humans didn't just defeat the Kryn Empire. They changed what it means to wage war in this galaxy. They proved that the most powerful weapon isn't the one that destroys your enemies. It's the one that turns your enemies into friends. And that, perhaps, is the most terrifying thing of all. The end.